You are listening to the Marriage in Action podcast. We are Dustin and Alana Bookout, and we want to welcome you into our cozy living room where we chat about all the crazy marriage topics with a splash of TMI and a promise to keep it real.
We haven't done this in a while. Actually, we did do this.
We did a whole hour-long podcast, 45 minutes.
It was another it was a long podcast. Then we went into Camtasia, which is how we've always processed the podcast or audios, videos, whatever. And for some reason, we sound like a robot. It is jacked up. I even posted it in Insta stories on our Marriage in Action page, and we just tried it again, and it did it again. And so now we're recording on another platform, and then hopefully when we put it in Camtasia instead of recording in Camtasia. None of this matters. You people are like, just get to the good stuff. Point is, if you have any sort of words of wisdom or suggestions for a different platform we can use, we have sent in a ticket to Camtasia for them to figure out what is going on. But we're powering through the excuses. We're doing a podcast anyway in hopes that we don't sound like robots.
We're going to do it.
We're going to do it. So let's buckle up, because this is not the Dustin and Alana show or whatever you said.
Oh, I just made something up because I didn't know we were live and ready.
Oh, we're going for it because we got to go eat lunch. So let's get this done. Okay. So I know that we started, in the 5 podcasts we have launched in a year.
Hey, that's a season. Season 1.
I'm going to stop promising that we're going to do this. But anyway, we started reading reviews. And because it's been so long, I have no idea what review we have read and which we have not. But I'm going to read this one. It's from Archery Geek. I'm not sure if I've read this before, but these guys are amazing and funny. It keeps you engaged in the conversation. Keep it up. I don't know how funny this episode is going to be. We never know. It's not the title from, what did I say? The Hiney Holes title. So this one's not going to be like that. But what we want to talk about, hopefully it won't be a super long podcast, is I posted on our page yesterday. I feel like I'm going to burp, and I'm really trying not to do that. For
Don't do it in the mic.
Okay, hold on. Okay. I think
labor breaths.
Okay, I think it's past. All right. What I posted was a reel that said 3 reasons why your marriage might feel distant. There are so many reasons your marriage might feel distant, right? But I picked 3, and honestly, I know we have dealt with all 3, and it's not like in your marriage, you necessarily deal with one and you figure it out and then it never happens again. Like, there are seasons of life that spring up, and before you know it, you've kind of, gotten a little bit more distant between the two of you. And then hopefully you're healthy enough to identify that, talk about it, and then
get back on the right path.
Right. So the 3 things that I said in the reel, of the many that there could be, is your kids have become a bigger priority than your spouse. Been there, done that. You work harder at your job than on your marriage. I feel like that's a little bit of a mic drop.
We've both done that.
100%. And your wants are more important than your spouse's needs. I also feel like I was just in a moment of having mic drops, because I think we all know that those 3 things are probably not the healthiest, right. But do we care enough in that season to figure it out and to get back on the right track, like you said? So anyway, I posted that reel, got a lot of traction, a lot of interaction, a lot of DMs, more so than the comments. It was so many men and women in the DMs talking about, wow, I really needed to see that. Or we've been in that season, or I'm guilty of XYZ, or whatever it is. And so it just created a lot of conversation, so much so that I was like, we could talk about this, because I posted it in the stories with a poll that was saying, ever been true in your marriage? Of those 3 things, have any of those or a combination of those ever been true in your marriage. And we had hundreds. The last time I checked, it was like almost 1,000 people. And it hasn't even been 24 hours. So, but there was like almost 1,000 people that had participated on that poll, and 92% said, oh yes, that has been an issue. One of those things have been an issue in our marriage. So on the next story, or in the next slide, I said, which one is true in your marriage? And I just gave it, the three options, because clearly we know it could be a combination of the three. But whether it is your wants are more important than your spouse's needs, you work harder at your job than on your marriage, or your kids are a priority. And of the 92% of people that said, yes, that's been an issue, 61% said the kids are more of a priority. So that, 45 minutes later, we are here to tell you that's what we're tackling today. Something's happening on our screen. Fix it, baby. Fix it. Oh, I hope we're still recording in this moment.
We're still recording.
Okay, good. All right. So we're going to tackle the kids being a priority. The other reason I wanted to tackle this is because in the comment section and in our DMs, I feel like this was the biggest topic, clearly, because that's the biggest, poll answer.
Right.
But a lot of people saying, but how do you not prioritize? Like, how do you prioritize your spouse over your kids, especially when you have smaller kids? So I just want to dive into that. First, how often or how many seasons do you think we have fallen into that where we prioritized our kids over our marriage?
How long have our kids been alive?
We have a 16-year-old.
We have a 16-year-old. We have a 12-year-old. And I would say every day, year. I mean, there are some days where it just seems like the kids are the focus, you know?
But would you say that we have made them more of a priority than our marriage?
At times, yes.
Yeah. So that was my question, is
Yes.
how often, because you just made it sound to
Sorry.
the public that we are guilty of this every day for 16 years.
Well, I think there are moments throughout the day that, I mean, our kids are very active. They're very involved in school and sports and whatnot. So it's growing up even, it's just very, very easy to be so focused on them, and that we become selfless and don't focus on not just ourselves, but our marriage, and pour into our kids, when you need to be pouring into your marriage, pouring into yourself, pouring into doing all those things. And the goal is to try to keep a perfect balance. Realistically, that's not going to happen. I mean, because there are going to be times where you are just going nonstop with the kids, especially if one spouse works and one spouse is at home because your kids are young. One spouse is the stay-at-home mom or dad, whoever it is going to be the one that's directly focused on the kids all the time, all day, until their spouse gets home. So it's very easy to fall into that trap. But you just have to remember that your marriage is the one that's going to suffer from that. So you need to focus. You need to put that focus back on your marriage as soon as you possibly can.
Okay, so let's rewind.
Mm-hmm.
How often over 16 years, like percentage-wise, would you say? Well, I'm changing the question because I still am not sure if you answered my question. Come on, homeboy. I guess I want to be real with our friends here. So I'm saying, how often, what percent do you feel like we've been guilty of that out of the 16 years? Because yes.
How do we measure that? Like, I don't know how to measure that.
Well, because I think I would have answered it differently. The way you answered it makes me feel like what I'm hearing from you is that you feel like we've been in the place of not putting our marriage as the priority.
No.
Hold your horses.
Okay.
Okay. So what I was hearing from you, the way you answered it, was that you felt like, yes, for 16 years, we have been guilty of this. Whereas I would say there have been pockets where it was evident that our kids were the priority, which I'm going to get to that because your kids will be a priority. But the goal is that our marriage is still the priority. And it's more important to us than our kids. But we have been guilty of that for sure.
Absolutely.
But I feel like, especially we learned early on, because with little kids, it's so easy to fall into that. I know we fell into that many times. And I'm here to be real honest with them, saying we still fall into that. But I feel like we're really, over the years, we've been really healthy about it, that we are able to identify it and fix the issue when it arises. So I want to make sure you
I feel like we're pros now, and we just look at it and we say, we've been focusing on the kids today. Let's focus on each other.
Hubba, 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 hey.
Ba-dum-boom.
Yeah. Okay. So do you feel like we agree on?
Yes.
Like,
I don't know how to measure how often or what percentage or anything, but there have been seasons or times that we have focused on the kids more than our marriage.
Okay. So let's give examples. If your kids are the priority in your marriage, sorry, no, that did not come out right. If your kids are more of a priority than your marriage, here are some things that may look like. Do you need me to start? Because I'm like,
I'm like, I don't even. Sometimes it's hard to even recognize what it looks like because you don't know.
Yeah, but I want to help them.
Yeah.
See it if that's a blind spot to you. So, okay, you touched out moms. I hear you. I do. I had little kids once. I know the feeling of being touched out. Your little kids have been nursing all day, or they're slobbering on you, or they want you to hold them even when you're trying to cook dinner, or you're going to the bathroom, you're sitting on I was going to say the crapper, but maybe I should just say you're sitting on the commode, the toilet, and your kids still, whether they're actually in there watching you or they're under the door. Yes, I know that feeling. I've been there. So many mamas of little kids are like, I am touched out. So you may be, here's just one thing. Your kids may be more of a priority in this season right now than your marriage if you are using the excuse of physical touch. I'm not equating this to sex, but if physical touch is given to your kids and you're using that excuse as the reason you're not giving it to your spouse. Was that hateful or like just a truth bomb?
I think it's just a truth bomb.
It's a hard one to swallow because
I don't think it was hateful.
It's a hard one to swallow because I remember being like feeling that way, but it's still truth in that if that's the excuse, then the kids are the priority right there. Right there.
Right there.
Okay, another thing. If I feel like I could come up with a lot of examples that I probably should have written down before just jumping onto this and we're not knowing what we're talking about. But if your time and focus, let me circle back to that. Do you have it? Because I want to explain something I wrote in a comment on the page. Let me just go ahead and do that. Squirrel. Someone on that reel commented and said, but how do you not prioritize small children who need you for so much? And I love this question because I want to make sure we write it in the sand right now. Like we write it down and let you know prioritizing does not mean time. Like to say that your marriage has priority over your kids does not mean your marriage gets more time than your kids. So I just want to free everybody from feeling that way, because if you are equating what I'm saying as far as if your kids are more of a priority than your marriage, and you might be thinking, well, I spend, stay-at-home moms, you might be saying, I spend 12 hours with my kids. I see my husband for 2 hours. Like I can't make my marriage a priority, but that's not what I'm saying. Priority does not equal time. Not in the sense that I'm talking about making your marriage a priority. So what I said was keeping your spouse as a top priority doesn't necessarily mean that they get the majority of your time, but it does mean that making time to spend with them is an absolute priority. So I just wanted to clarify that, because when you get in the season of making your kids more of a priority, what you do is making, and I'm not saying this just for wives. I'm not throwing you under the bus, because husbands do this too. Spouses in general. If your kids are more of a priority than your marriage, you will use any excuse in the book. Doesn't matter if it's touched out, too tired, don't have time. You make all of those excuses as to why you and your spouse are not connecting on any level, whether it's physically, emotionally, just communicating, spending time with one another, having fun with one another, dating, whatever you want to put in the blank. When the time or opportunity arises, either you're not making the time to do those things, or when the time arises, you're using any of the excuses in the book because your kids have sucked all of your time, energy, touch, love, affection. It sucked it out of you.
So how do you recognize when you are prioritizing anything, like your kids over?
I think that was what I was trying to get us to give some examples before, was to try to show that you're in that spot when XYZ. And so one of the things, whether it's you're giving your spouse excuses or yourself excuses as to not do these things with your spouse. If your kids say, can you read me another book? Can you come do this? Can you come do that? And the answer is always yes to them, but you're saying no to your spouse. There's a red flag right there. I'm not saying not take care of your kids. I'm not saying, oh, sorry, your dad, your mom is more important and I can't bathe you today. I can't feed you today. Like, clearly this is not what I'm talking about. I just want to make sure that your yeses are not just because you have to give them to your kids. Your yeses also need to be to your spouse. And that looks different in every season. Mm-hmm. When you have little kids, I get that you are tired. I totally get it. But your marriage is worth the time investment. And that may be that in the season, you and your spouse, whether it's you and your husband or you and your wife, whoever is listening right now, that you get together and say, I am so drained from work, or I am so drained from taking the kids, caring for the kids all day, whatever the answer is. But we still matter so much that we need to make sure we're setting time aside for each other every day. I don't care if it's 5 minutes or if it's a couple of hours or whatever that looks like. If you're not doing that, if you're not connecting with your spouse every day, there's a red flag right there.
I think it's as simple as even just saying to your spouse, when you recognize it, saying, I don't feel close to you right now. Yeah. Or I don't feel prioritized. And I think it sounds like it's something difficult to say, but it's as simple as that. Just saying, I don't feel connected to you right now, or I don't feel close to you right now.
How often have we said that to each other?
Oh, man. We've been married a long time, so a lot of times.
We've said that a lot of times.
Oh, yeah. And it is in a season where things get prioritized over maybe our relationship or our marriage. It's just, and sometimes you do have to prioritize things over your marriage in a moment or whatever, but not
sure.
But it's very easy to get stuck. How many people can say that they feel like their spouse's phone is prioritized over them?
Ooh, that's a good one.
With the day and age of social media and electronic devices or computers or whatever, I think there's a lot of things that can be distractions or can make your spouse feel inadequate compared to whatever you're doing or scrolling or whatnot. So I think it's really important to recognize that quickly versus putting it off, because the longer you put it off, the harder I think it is to have that conversation.
Yeah. And I like that you brought up the distractions, because here's another thing to be aware of is that, okay, maybe I'm making the kids a priority. Maybe they get all of my time, but I don't have time to spend with my spouse because of all that. But I would argue with you and say, let me see the, on at least on iPhones, it shows you how much time you spend on all your apps.
It's a weekly report. Well, I get a weekly report.
Yeah. So it's like, if you want to argue that I don't have the time, but then you look at how much time you're actually spending on your phone, that's just one example, or the TV or whatever, you do have time. What you're just not doing is making it a priority to take some of that time that you do have and actually focus on your marriage, your relationship, your spouse. This isn't as fun as our normal ones. This is like, we got the like ruler out popping everybody's hands.
It's a serious topic. I mean, we can have fun with it, but it is a serious topic. I mean,
we need to throw some hiney holes in here.
Oh my gosh! She already threw hiney holes in there.
If you haven't listened to that episode, go listen to that for some fun. Okay, so in part of the comment to that person who said, how do you not prioritize it? I had just read you the last part of my comment back to her. But I said, let me just read from the top. You can give all the time that is needed to your kids, but making time for your spouse should still be a priority. That should be a non-negotiable, period. Like it just should. When we end up putting our spouse on the back burner, especially for too long, the relationship often goes through cold seasons, quote unquote. I felt like I was pretty good in that whole like word picture, because if it does get put on the back burner and the burner's not on or whatever, I always feel like the stuff boiling is in the front. You don't typically like do the low stuff in the front and boil in the back. At least I don't. I'm not sure, but just play along with this word picture. So when you shove your spouse to the back, unknowingly or knowingly, it can go cold. Make time for each other every day, even if it's just for minutes at a time. And when you do get time to get together or to be together, take full advantage by keeping distractions away. And I know, we are so guilty of that even to this day. It is still something that we have to work on, be mindful of. And sometimes we know we're mindful of it and we don't even care. But we do get a lot of time together. So I feel like maybe that's part of the thing, is that we're just like, I've seen you all day. I've spent time with you all day. I'm going to be on my phone, which
I'm going to prioritize something else.
I'm going to prioritize, which is fine. It is fine to have those. But if you're not spending any time with, then put the dadgum phone away. Okay? Put it down.
I'm going to blackout scroll now.
And go spend time with your spouse. So this, is there any other things you want to add to this?
No, I think it's extremely accurate that this topic is on marriages in general. I think this is a really big reason that a lot of marriages are struggling, is because of prioritizing other things in front of your spouse. And
I know before we got married, my mom, I know I've shared this story before, but my mom said that we didn't even have kids. I'm not pregnant. Like, just out of the blue, she says, remember that, when the time comes, never love your kids more than you love each other. And at the time I was like, how random is she? Like, okay.
Thanks, Mom.
Thanks for that tidbit. But it has stuck with me for 20 years. We're going to be married 19 years this year, but together 20 years. And she said it, before I don't even think we were engaged yet. I'm not sure, but maybe we were. Regardless, it's been, a couple decades, it feels like. Yeah. And it has stuck with me all that time, because it is really easy. I feel like more so for a mom than a dad, especially if you're nursing or you're caring for them. Even if nursing is such a physical bond, right? But even if you're just caring for them every day and you're nurturing them all day long, it is really easy to find that your heartstrings, your whole heart is like poured into this kid. And then there's just this man over here. There's just this roommate situation type thing.
That's what you become, is a roommate.
Yeah. And we want you to avoid that, because your spouse did come first. You're not one with your child. Not physically, not emotionally, not spiritually, but you are one with your spouse. And hopefully you're one in all those ways: physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, like maybe not mentally all the time, but like that you are connected. And we want you guys to be like that. So what tips can we give them? This is so random because I have no idea what to say, but what are some tips we can give them to get back on the same page, making sure that regardless of how much time is spent on marriage or kids, how do they know, tip wise, that, or how can they I'm not making any sense.
No,
You're just laughing at me trying to sputter.
I'm laughing going, I'm a processor, so this is going to take me so much time to think and like methodically get this. I'm like, how am I going to come up with an answer to this right now?
Well, I was trying to spit this out. You were laughing, so I thought I just wasn't.
No, I was laughing going, how does she expect me to answer this right?
So what are some tips? You don't have to answer if you're processing, but what are some tips we can give them so that they can make their marriage a priority? I will start. The first thing I want you to do, no matter if you feel like you are guilty of this or not, because we love as spouses to be like, yep, my spouse is guilty of that, instead of looking at ourselves. So what I want you to do, regardless if you feel guilty or not of putting your kids as a bigger priority or a more important priority than your spouse, I want you to go to your spouse and ask them whether it's, what am I trying to say? Do you think that I have put you on the back burner either now or ever? Have I ever made you feel like you are on the back burner in my life? You could even be more specific, saying, do you feel that the kids are more important to me than you are to me?
And remember, this isn't just kids. This is job or whatever it is. I mean,
I think that's so true. You can apply this to anything, but I want our tips to be kid specific since that's what we're talking about here. But that's true. I'm not sure if you don't have kids, why you'd be listening to this ramble, but
this is true.
But yeah, okay. So kid specific though, with people who are struggling, because we had 61% say that's the issue. Yeah. Does that feel fair?
That's fair. Okay.
So how can we give those people the tip to prioritize? So go ask your spouse those questions. I said, whether it is, have I put you on the back burner, and or do you feel like the kids are more important to me than you are to me? How would you answer those questions? Do you feel like the kids are more important to me than you?
Right now?
Yeah.
No.
Have I put you on the back burner?
Right now? No.
Ever? Yes.
Ever? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll flip it right back to you.
I don't know that you've ever done either of those things, if I'm being real honest. Like even when they were little, I don't think that I have ever felt in the kid arena, maybe work, other stuff, but in the kid arena, I don't feel like you've ever made me feel like I'm on the back burner or that they're more important. In fact, I feel like you have always made it very clear to our kids, mama's first. So,
Mr. Perfect. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, but I'm just gonna give you the trophy award in this because I know,
really?
I know I've been guilty.
That actually surprises me.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know. I can't think of, I would have said there were times that maybe the boys' activities would have taken priority over, but I feel like I have done a pretty good job in balancing that. I don't know.
I'm finding you a first place trophy. I'm going to Amazon it to you.
Okay.
Just wait.
That was actually a surprise to me. I didn't know. Yeah.
Okay. It's been the last 16 years is kind of a blur, but I don't ever remember feeling that way from you. But just to add on to the perfectness, I'll go ahead and deflate that a little bit because I have felt like that with work.
Oh, I'm sure. That's fair.
I've even felt like that with your wants versus my needs. I felt like that. You've been guilty of that as well.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Yeah.
So anyway, we're perfect and we know it. So we just want to give you.
When it comes to the kids. So if you need any kid advice, no.
Well, give them some tips.
No.
If they feel disconnected and they're wanting to make sure their marriage is a priority, give them a tip. I gave them the questions. What you got?
I guess it just is a natural thing to me. Like I've always just made.
This is the perfectness coming out.
No. Just when it comes to the kids side of things. Yes. Now, with work and all that other stuff, I get very caught up in all that. Because I don't know. I just do. But with the kids, for whatever reason it is, I've always been very outspoken to the children, to the boys.
To the children.
To the boys, letting them know that their mother trumps them when it comes to things. Even if they've disrespected them or disrespected mom, Oh, don't disrespect mom.
The wrath
or the
of
wrath
the Lord.
of the Lord will come down upon you.
It's true.
So I don't know. It just has always been a natural thing for me to be the protector, the guardian, of her for the children. I keep saying children for the boys.
That sounds so like
for the children.
We're gonna break out in hymn now,
right? For the boys. So I don't know.
I've got a tip for you.
Okay, what you got?
Well, on behalf of you,
Mm-hmm.
also as a way to like also say this is why you have the trophy on this, because here's a tip. I've seen this many times. I've been guilty of this. I don't know if Dustin's ever been guilty of this. You have no idea what I'm about to say.
I have no clue.
Okay. There are many times in life where a kid, I'm sure you are all thinking this when I spell it out, when I finally spill it out, where a kid might do something and one parent is fine with it and the other parent is not. Let me break it down. Maybe a kid is disrespectful to their mom and the mom is like, you can't talk to me like that. But the dad says, he's fine. You talked, like where he backs up the kid. I'm just using this as a hypothetical. Like,
no.
Or anything. Maybe the kid knocked something over and the dad gets frustrated and then the mom backs the kid up. Do you see what I'm saying? Where they are not seeing eye to eye with it.
I don't think I've ever backed the kids up.
That's what I'm saying. I have, but I am saying I don't think Dustin has ever done that. Even when I'm like, babe, like it's okay, because here's the thing. He has always had my back in front of the kids, which in turn makes me feel like I absolutely know I'm the priority over my kids. That was the whole, like the tidbit of the day. The moral of that long story is that
I didn't even realize I did that.
What?
I just don't realize I do that. Like
You've always had my back. So it does not matter even if I'm wrong. Now, Dustin might come back later and apologize to the kids by saying, yeah.
Hey, we talked about this. Mom's wrong. I'm right.
No, I'm saying like, even if the kids are right and I'm in the wrong, Dustin still somehow manages to make sure the kids know he's on my team. He's not on their team. So if you could take this in a realistic, applicable tip, it would be asking yourself, do I make my spouse feel like I'm backing them up? Or am I putting a rift between us because I choose to back up my kids more than I'm backing up my spouse? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that was a fun tip. But really, it was just because thinking about the way that you make me feel like a priority, that just came to my head, is that you always have my back, even when I feel like you should have the kids back. And you're like, you support me with your words in front of them. You support me even with your body language. Like, he will attach himself to me. And especially if the kids have wronged me or hurt my feelings in some way.
Don't you ever. Don't you ever, boys.
Yeah. Okay. So any other tips you can, you still have given them nothing.
I know. I guess I don't realize that I do some of these things. And when you said that,
since you're the
I was
expert, you need to tell us your tips.
But I can't give tips if I don't even realize what I'm doing. Like, it's just, I don't know.
Okay, I'm just going to be the tip master. Make time with your spouse. You are not going to get any more minutes in the day than me, Joe Schmo, person over in Uganda. You have the same amount of time that everybody else does. So take priority with your marriage by setting time aside. Doesn't matter if you have to stay up 5 minutes later, get up 5 minutes earlier. Whatever it is, making time that they feel seen, heard, and loved.
I would also add to that, try to make sure it's not a place that you are comfortable, like, especially if you're coming home from work. Don't go lay down in bed and try to have this conversation. Don't be all cozy. Try to make sure you're awake, you're coherent, and you're ready to focus and
I was like, where were you? Because I like to be cozy. I was trying to understand what you're saying.
You know me, like if I lay down, I could be out in seconds.
Oh, I see what you mean.
And it's a pointless conversation to have if I'm horizontal. Like it really is.
I know this. I see what you're saying. Versus me, I feel like I do better when I'm
Oh
cozy.
my gosh.
I think so. The point that
Your
you're trying to
brain turns
make.
on when you lay down in that bed.
So the point you're trying to make sure everybody understands and that I understood correctly was that you don't want people to make time with their spouse when they're not giving their best.
Correct.
Right?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
And our work here is
Thank you
done.
for translating.
So anyway, that was fun. I'm really hungry. It's been 35 minutes. Hopefully you have, 3 or 4 tips that we threw at you. And if anything, just being able to, first step is acknowledging there's a problem, right? So if there is a problem in your marriage, go talk about it. Go figure out if you feel like you're on the back burner, if you feel like I've made the kids more of a priority, what have I done that has led to that? Help me identify that so I can fix it. What can we do together as a couple to rekindle our love for each other and make our marriage a priority? What are your ideas? What are my ideas? Let's talk it out. Let's go have a date. Let's whatever. Go make love.
Whatever.
Talk.
Whatever.
Snuggle. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, we'll be back. Maybe not.
We'll be back. We will. We love you guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Go check out our Instagram page if you're not already following us, Marriage in Action _. We post sometimes every day, sometimes not, but all the marriage tips and tricks over there, and we share our good, our bad, our ugly. We try to be super real with you so you can apply it to your marriage. We'll see you over there. And
make sure you leave a review.
Yeah, leave a review so we can share it next time. See you later, friends. Make your marriage a priority because your marriage is worth it.